In this video, we're going to break down a traditional IRA versus a Roth IRA to determine which one's going to be a better option for you to save into. So we're going to look at some examples with differing tax rates today versus in the future in retirement to see where you're going to come out ahead. My name is Scott Caulfield. I'm a CPA and a CFA charter holder and the founder of Sophos Wealth Management. First, a quick breakdown between the two. So a traditional IRA, you're going to save pre-tax dollars into your retirement account, and those are going to grow tax deferred until you take a withdrawal in retirement. So what that means is today when you contribute, say a traditional IRA, the 2024 contribution limit is $7,000. So if you contribute $7,000, your taxable income is going to go down by that amount and you're going to receive a tax benefit for that today. All the growth in that account, you're not going to pay any taxes on it along the way. And then when you take withdrawals in the future, those are taxable withdrawals. Now a Roth IRA, it has the same contribution limit, $7,000 in 2024. And both the IRA and the Roth, you can do an additional $1,000 catch-up contribution if you're over, I think it's 50. Now, with the Roth, you don't receive any tax benefit today. Those are post-tax dollars that goes in there. However, all the growth occurs tax-free, and when you take withdrawals in the future, you don't have to pay any taxes. So the basic rule with these accounts is because you get that tax benefit today with a traditional IRA, if your tax rate is higher today than it will be in the future at retirement when you're withdrawing that money, you're going to be better with a traditional IRA. If your tax rate is lower today than it is at retirement, you're going to be better with a Roth. If your tax rate is essentially going to be the same, the two accounts, you should be indifferent. They're going to be exactly the same. So we're going to look at some examples to just kind of prove that out. We're going to assume for all these examples that you're saving $7,000 before the impact of taxes, that you're going to receive an 8% growth rate, and that you're going to keep that money in there for 30 years before you take it all out in retirement. So if we assume a 24% tax rate, and we assume that's the rate today, and with the withdrawal in retirement, there is no difference between the two. So you save $7,000 into your IRA. After the impact of taxes, that $7,000 in the Roth becomes $5,320, so $5,320. Both of those are allowed to grow at 8%. So that future value all the way in 2054, that's going to be a little over $70,000 for the traditional and $53,500 and change for the Roth. Now, when you take the impact of taxes on the traditional, that brings its after-tax value equal to the Roth, so $53,000 for both. So there's no difference if the tax rates are exactly the same today as they are in retirement between a Roth and a traditional. What if the tax rate is higher today than in the future? As we already said, we know the traditional IRA is going to be a better option. So what we see here is, once again, we put the $7,000 into both accounts, but the after-tax value of that traditional is actually higher than the Roth in 2054. So it's now almost $62,000 because the impact of taxes, instead of a 24% tax rate in the future, we assume a 12% in this example. So it's the better account. Roth in this account, it's still worth $53,000 at retirement. If instead we assume your tax rate is lower today than it is in the future, so we're going to assume a 12% tax rate, the contribution amount into that Roth, now instead of $5,300, it's more like $6,160, because it only has a 12% hit on the taxes today. Both accounts grow significantly. So again, $70,000 in the IRA, almost $62,000 in the Roth. But then, so the Roth after-tax value 30 years from now is higher than the traditional if your tax rate now goes to 24%. So higher at the end than it is today. So those kind of examples show if you expect your tax rate to increase over time, you go with the Roth. If you expect it to decrease over time, you go with the traditional. Some other considerations for you though. First of all, tax rates in the future are unknown. I mean, we know what the rates are today, and with some advanced financial planning, we can kind of get an idea of what your future taxable income is going to look like, but we do not know what your future tax rate is because those change. Now, I think it's helpful to kind of look at the history of tax rates. We can pretty objectively say that tax rates today are relatively low compared to history in the US. This chart kind of just gives you an idea of where the highest marginal rate has been historically. And you can see we're actually relatively low today, so it could certainly be much higher. There's also some uncertainty in the future, and I think you got to keep this in mind. So, it's kind of the idea that a bird in hand is worth two in the bush. If you can take that tax break today, we know you're getting that benefit, and I think taking that known benefit may have some advantage over an unknown benefit in the future, especially for high earners. Because if you look at most recently when Congress was looking at some different bills, including Build Back Better, they were considering changing some of the tax laws around Roths. So with a Roth account, you don't have any required minimum distribution. They were thinking about starting to require an RMD for Roths, and they were going to do that based on either income or assets. So you could be in your 20s and have an RMD from a Roth if your balance was over a certain limit, or if your income was over a certain limit. So this would really bring down the attractiveness of accounts like that, and is one reason why you might prefer an IRA, especially if the two are close. However, that did not pass. I mean, again, we're dealing with an unknown future, so hard to say there, but I think it's something that you should keep in mind. Also, the flexibility of the two accounts. If you think there's a possibility you may need to tap this, let's say you think maybe I need a down payment in the future, or you just don't have much excess savings, a Roth might be a better option, because you can take your contributions to a Roth, you can withdraw anytime without any penalties or taxes. Now, the growth in the Roth, you would have to pay a penalty on, but again, no taxes, and you can touch that principal. It is not true with a traditional IRA. If you're touching that principal, not only are those contributions, not only are you going to have to pay taxes, but you're going to have to pay a 10% early withdrawal penalty. So a little bit more flexibility with the Roth there. A final consideration too is tax diversification. Most people have the bulk of their retirement savings in traditional tax-deferred accounts. I think there's an advantage towards having a little diversification. So this would be some in tax-free accounts, some in taxable, and some in tax-deferred. This gives you more levers to play with in retirement. I've done a video about this before, but when you have more control over your income in retirement, you can kind of play with and optimize your tax situation a little bit better by either taking more income in years when, say, capital gains are low, or when you haven't started taking Social Security yet. Things like that. It gives you a lot more optionality, and there's value in that. So for those who have a lot of money already in tax deferred, either 401k or traditional IRA, that's something to consider. You may prefer that Roth. All in all, though, the option that you choose is going to be highly dependent on your situation. How's your taxable income going to change in the future? What kind of options do you have in the 401k? What's your overall savings situation look like? But I'd appreciate it if you like this video, subscribe to my channel, and I'm always happy to discuss your situation and how you might be able to best optimize your retirement savings. Thanks a lot.